Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or 50 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J and I am here with Shah Barrett.
It's very true. Hi.
Wendy Vella.
Nothing like starting professional. Hello.
yeah. And Cheryl Phipps.
Welcome back.
And this week we have an awesome guest. I'm super excited. We've got Renee Rose.
Yay.
Renee.
Hi, Renee.
Thank you.
So what I will do is give you everyone a quick bio of who you are, Renee, and then we will get into the questioning, the super awesome questions that I have for you today. But first, actually, just really quickly, I just want to say congratulations.
Yay!
So this week, Renee is on the USA Today list for it's called Alpha's Vow, is that right? For your latest book? And what's so exciting about this book, which you were just mentioning to us, is that it's a full price new release book that you were on the USA Today list for. That is awesome. Congratulations.
Way to go.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
It feels like a milestone because the other times I've hit were like 99-cent books. So this is the first time it's been like new release, full price, boom.
Yeah,
Wow.
awesome. And it's
so
what, the 8th book in a series, is that right? No, what number is it? Yeah.
Well, it's a spin-off series, so it's the second book in the spin-off, but there's 13 in the first.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, there
series,
you go. I got that completely wrong. I think I got the 8th number. The 8th time you've been on the USA Today list. That might have been where I got the 8th from.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to read your bio really quickly and then we'll get into it. So USA Today best-selling author Renee Rose loves a dominant, dirty-talking alpha hero. Sounds awesome, to be fair. She sold over 1 million copies of steamy romance with varying levels of kink. Her books have been featured in USA Today's Happily Ever After and Popsugar. Named Eroticon USA's next top erotic author in 2013, she's also won Spunky and Sassy's favorite sci-fi and anthology author, the Romance Review's best historical romance, and has hit the USA Today list 8 times with her Wolf Ranch books and various anthologies. So that's awesome. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Super excited.
So to start, what I'd love you to do is talk about your journey into self-publishing, like where you came from, what made you want to start a writing career, and how long you've been going, how many books, that kind of thing. Go for it.
So I started in 2012, kind of like right after the 50 Shades of Grey sort of hit the market, and I'm kinky, just naturally kinky, and I had read some books and I was like, I could do this, So I started with it like niche publishers who were doing that kind of like dominance stuff. And then after, I guess 2015 is when I went indie and just totally self-published. And haven't looked back since, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty excited, yeah.
So had you always wanted to be a writer, or was it just you? Yeah.
Definitely. I was like the kid with the nose in the book, like I'm sure all of you guys were my whole life. And I got my degree in English, and then I had, sort of like 13 boring years as a technical writer for an engineering firm. And I also do body work. So I'm into energy work, that kind of thing. So I had some time off doing that, having babies. And then it was like, when I found this, it was like I heard like the angels. I was like, oh, this is for me. This is totally for me, And so like I sat down, I wrote like my first novella in like 6 days. It was only 25,000 words. It was short. And I sent it off to that niche publisher, and like they had just gotten a new editor. So it was like the first thing he read, and so I was like published within 3 weeks. So it's just like this weird story that would never happen to anybody. So like I wrote it in a week. It was published 2 weeks later. And then it like just sort of, that was that time in Amazon too, where you could just put a book up and it sold. Yeah. And, it was selling 100 copies, which now I know I wouldn't be excited about 100 copies a week, but like for your first book, I was and no advertising, just, so my first check was like $4,500. And I was like, I've got my new calling. This is what I'm doing,
Oh my God.
And then of course, like it wasn't that easy after, of course it's like never that easy afterwards, but it felt like a sign, like the universe was saying, this is where you should go.
That's 100% a sign. All I can think of is after years writing dry technical stuff for engineering, and then suddenly you get paid to write all this cool stuff.
To write the fantasies that have been in my head all my life, right? Like,
oh my God, that's awesome. I love that. Okay, so that's a fantastic start too.
Yeah.
career. So what are you writing now? Like, so we just mentioned before, like you've got historical romance in your bio, and I didn't realize you wrote historical romance. So can you talk a little bit about how you progressed to where you are now in terms of your writing genre and things?
Yeah, I think so. I write mostly now wolf shifters and like mafia. So I'm doing Russian mafia. But I think, and I know that I invented a game. Like I definitely don't play that game. I sort of just write whatever I want. But I think the overarching thing is that because I'm always writing that dominant alpha male, like my readers will kind of follow me through. And some of them say like, oh, I didn't think I liked paranormal, but I tried it because it was you, and now I like it, So I think I'm doing everyone a favor by not staying in my lane.
Awesome.
Yeah. And your series are long too, aren't they? So you're not switching all the time or anything like that.
No.
Right. Yeah. I just am pretty prolific. Like I kind of pound them out. So
yeah, because I think I counted on Amazon and it was more than 100 books. Like it took me a while to count more than 100 books, I have to say.
I know, I've lost count. Like people say, how many have you written? And I'm like, over 100. Like
So on average, during a year, how many would you publish?
Probably 10 a year.
Oh, wow. And length of them?
I shoot usually for 50,000.
Okay.
I would love to write longer, but I usually don't have that much to say. Like I'm usually done by then.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome if you're done. Like why make it longer?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I've read several of your books, and I wouldn't say, like, I didn't feel like, oh, I wish there was more, like that's the fear, right? Like maybe as an author, maybe I should write longer, maybe there should be more to it. But actually as a reader reading your books, I was like, oh no, this is awesome. I love this book. This is perfectly packaged. So
good.
That was awesome. Awesome to know that, right?
Yeah.
So what we wanted to talk to you about today is that you have a Facebook group, and you talked at Romance Author Mastermind about kind of the abundance mindset, and I am looking into that kind of stuff for myself at the moment, and I know the other Spargos are all really interested. So I just wanted you to talk first of all about what that is. Like, what does that mean when you talk about the abundance mindset? And let's dig right into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is like my favorite topic ever. So when you invited me to talk about that, I was like, oh, goody. So basically, it's like our mindset creates everything. And whether you believe, I am pretty energy woo-woo, but whether you believe it's energy or whether you believe it's just psychology, either way, it works. So it's like your self-image as an author really shapes like how far you'll go. So, for a long time, I had this like, oh, I'm just a kinky author. Like I'm not mainstream. I had this whole like, oh, I want to be mainstream, but I'm not because I write kink. And that was like holding me back. And then I saw like kinky authors make it to the top 100. And I was like, why do I think I can't? Like what? And it was just my own limiting. I was just cutting off my own abundance, right? Just made some decision that wasn't relevant and functioning from that. And so it's like, abundance mindset for authors, I think, is like looking at what are all those traps you have, like how to find yourself and how can you bust out of that mold and redefine yourself as millionaire author even before you get there. So that's what I was like, we've been calling each other like millionaire authors for years now. I finally hit it last year. And it felt like, in a way it was like, oh, and now I'm here already. Like, because it was so pie in the sky when we started. But the fact is I got there because that was what I was holding as where I wanted to go. Right.
Yeah.
So, So, and then now this is my thing, like, oh, can I hit, because then I thought, well, you're only good enough to hit USA Today on a sale book. So now like I just busted my new belief, like, oh, I can hit on a new release. Like I can hit on a full price book.
Yeah.
And so it's like, look, I'm sorry.
No, just saying like those mindsets, they stop you in terms of like, you think, oh, I'm not a $1 million author. Then you don't do things that you could be doing to make that happen. Right. So
exactly. Or you don't, like, I try to think last year I was asking myself the question, like, what would a millionaire author do? Because it's like that thing where like, oh, you're not willing to spend on ads maybe because you don't think your books are good enough, or you're not willing to, like, I've been really trying to like hire more help because I'm still in the like, oh, I have to do it all myself. And like, would a millionaire author do it all herself? Like, I don't think so. Like, just don't be so reluctant. So like trying to ask like those questions, like, am I functioning from that poverty mentality, or I'm not good enough. It's usually like, I'm not good enough is my wound. Like, or am I like embodying like, I am boss bitch author, sorry, just abundant, millionaire author. And like, what choices would you make? And so in a way, it's like, it's fake it till you make it, right? So you just start trying on the new self-image, even if it hasn't shown up yet, and trying to function from that new reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny trying to do it to start out. Like, it feels like, I don't know, the first time you said to yourself, I'm $1 million author, when you weren't, right? Like, how did that feel for you? How did that go?
I mean, it was more like giggle. Like it was so not real. It was like we sent each other mugs that say $1 million author, because it was like, now that I hit 1 million, I feel silly having the mugs in my cabinet. Like, it's like I'm showing off, but it was like a target, so it was like, and it's nice to have friends who are willing to play with you. Otherwise you do feel kind of ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But like, we would just say, like, we'd be like, oh yeah, I remember when you hit the New York Times list, it was so awesome. And we flew out to celebrate, and, just pretending, like, just, and it's fun. And like, when you start vibing on that vibe, like, you catch the energy. If you believe in energy, you catch the energy of it. If you believe in psychology, it's like, you're just training your mind to think bigger, right?
Yeah.
And basically you're living a vision statement there, aren't you? You're kind of actually, by playing in it, it's way more powerful than actually just sticking pictures on a desktop or whatever. That's kind of, just seeing that mug, I'm sure, was a very, very, more than a subliminal reminder,
Yes, right. Yeah. So I think, I don't know if you guys, I think you guys heard of these books. Which one was it? It was in Get Rich Lucky Bitch, where she tells you to put in, like, as your password, like, so I put in like 7-figure author as my password, or so that like every single time you log on your computer, you're reminded of that target.
Yeah.
You're strengthening that vision.
Yeah.
So and some, like, just even like Post-it notes, or like just saying, I just like to text my friends and be like, you're $1 million author, like, just look at how much you've done already. And even though they're not there yet, but it's like, just playing that way, just playing in that energy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so we talk a little bit about, like, often, and we do it ourselves here in the spa, like, we talk about how hard it is to be a self-publisher and the struggle around that kind of thing. So how do you, because that's another big thing that we're telling ourselves as well, right? So it's not just about the positive side of telling ourselves we're $1 million authors. There's also this kind of, all these stories that we tell us about how we have to struggle and how hard things are.
So true. That struggle thing, like, that whole struggle bus, right? The whole, like, I think, like, we're trained, I don't know, as human beings or just as a society or whatever, just to always look for the problems and try to solve them. I think that helps us feel control, right? It's like, oh, I know how to do my life because I'm going to look for the problems and I'm going to fix them. Yeah. But that keeps you in the problem, right? So it's like, if instead we were looking for, like, where we want to go and playing with that energy, it's like everything just lightens up, and there's like all these possibilities appear that you couldn't see when you were looking for the problems.
It's almost to the point where you think there has to be a problem and you start looking for the problems. And so if you can train your mind to start looking for the opportunities, like,
or the gratitude, like, I know gratitude gets old, and sometimes if you're not feeling it, it's really like, I'm supposed to feel grateful, but but I know my kids, I'd be like, think of what's grateful, and they're like, shut up. But it really, like, celebrating your wins, right? Like, just really going, like, being like, hey, look how far I've made it. Whether it's publishing one book, if you publish one book, you are freaking awesome. Like, how many people want to write a book and never do? You've already published a book. You've made it. Like, you've made it so much farther than most people. Most authors don't make more than 5 figures a year. So if you've made more than $10,000, you're in the top 10%. So if you're telling yourself you're not good enough right now, it's not true. Like, you've already done so much. Like, and so it's like really honoring, like, what you've already accomplished and who you already are. I feel like that's
hard, isn't it? That's hard.
Oh my God.
It's so hard because you naturally, I do that. I just play everything down. That's what I do. It's like, I'm not going to, blow my own horn, or no trumpet blowing here, like, it's just a natural thing to just play it down. And that's quite a difficult thing to turn around,
Yeah. I mean, And we totally keep ourselves small. Like, yeah, for one thing, we're taught not to brag, but then we also like that, almost like we are the hardest people on ourselves. You know, like if you're looking like who in my life is meanest to me, it is me. You know, and like I notice even now, like with all this work I've done, it's like all day long I'm nagging myself, like, you haven't sat down to get your words down yet. You need to do this. You better get going. Get in the I'm being kind to myself. You know, like I be kinder. And what difference would that make in my life? Like in my joy level, my happiness level, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing what a bit of kindness to yourself, ow, shit, just hit my hand, to yourself can do.
It's you slapping yourself into reality, Trudy.
I literally hit myself. Like literally.
The universe is telling you to be more kind.
I know. Oh my God. It's so funny. God.
You're right there, Trudy. I can see us.
It feels like that. It feels like I'm getting some kind of lesson right now. I'm hitting myself. So that's interesting. Like I love that, because we don't even notice it. This is what gets me sometimes about this whole stuff. It's like we have these kind of messages that they're telling ourselves, and we don't even think of them as a bad message. Like you might just say, "Hey, look, I'm just not that kind of person. I'm just." Like a big one for me was like, I'm just a messy person. I'm just, you know, that's me. It doesn't seem like a terrible thing to be telling yourself. It doesn't feel like this horrible, you know, I'm not really being mean, but actually, do I have to be a messy person? You know, so have you experienced anything like that?
Well, also like the measuring yourself against others instead of just, you know, so if you're like, you wrote one book, you're like, oh God, but she wrote 10, you know, then you're suddenly made of being like, I'm so amazing. I wrote this one book. You know, that we just do that, like comparing that's not, and none of that's relevant. Right. Like, but I'm all, you know, it's all, and then if you keep searching outside yourself to like, oh, do I measure up to this person? Do I measure, like, there's always going to be someone ahead of you that you're not as good as. And then, so if you're looking at that, you're always going to feel like crap because you're, you know.
And then it's a cycle downwards, right? Like if we feel like crap, do you feel like writing? Do you feeling like crap? Do you feel like promoting?
Yeah, you're not going to write a good book when you're judging yourself.
Yeah.
And we're always judging our, you know, I mean, it's just like, if you can step out of that, like you write your best when you're, oh, that book is awesome. I love this character, whatever it is. Like when you're excited, that's when it just like, you know, you're just, you're in the flow.
Yeah.
When it becomes a chore, that's when it's, you know.
And that's probably when you're being hard on yourself, you know, like, I mean, I don't know.
That flow, isn't it? It's hard to find that flow when you're constantly second guessing yourself.
Yeah.
Right. I know, it's the worst.
I think that's when sometimes when you feel blocked, I often think is actually stop and think about what you're thinking about. Like actually, what is the story? What is the thought that's going on inside you that's causing the block? It might be like, oh, I've got to hurry because of this deadline, or it might be, oh, this is not good, and oh, I'm not liking this, or oh, you know, like there's something in there, and maybe you just, if you can pull it out and look at it, maybe it won't be so, I don't know, powerful over you.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think the new book I'm writing is like, the book I'm trying to write right now has come out like way kinkier than what I write. Like I started writing super kink, like total erotica, and I moved into like, now I write romance, but this book just wants to be kink. Like so far they've been in the bedroom like the whole freaking time. And I keep the story, like I keep going in my head, like, what are you doing? This is nuts. Like this, but then I was like, who knows? Maybe this is exactly what you need to be writing right now. Like maybe like you're a better writer than you used to be. And so maybe you're going to write kink at a different level this time. And it's not work. And it's like, was I saying that kink was bad before? You know, like, why was I judging it? You know, like I was trying to just step out of judgment and be like, write what's in your head, because that's what's there, you know?
Yeah. That's
and also if it's been successful for you, you don't actually need to reinvent the wheel, do you? Because it's working. So
right. And I think, I mean, it's going to be too kinky for some people, and that's fine. Like you're not going to ever please everybody with your books.
No. And that's
some of the other books are going to be not kinky enough for some people, right? Like so.
Right. The other people who've been with me from the beginning are probably like, why don't you write more sex like you used to? Like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
That's brilliant.
No, that's awesome. So how did you get, like, where did you learn about the abundance mindset? Was it reading books, or did you?
I have like pretty much always been into it. Like I was into like Jerry and Esther Hicks before The Secret, you know, like way back. I think it was the someone gave me like a cassette tape, if that tells you how old, of like,
whoops,
right?
Yeah, I had
Of
a
like,
few of those.
of the Abraham Hicks stuff, like way back. And I really got the like manifesting thing. And then, and then it was always like, I read the Wayne Dyer stuff and like, What the Bleep. I don't know if you know any of those old, like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Got all of them.
Yeah. So, and then like my latest journey has been, I really enjoy the tools of access consciousness. Like that really like blew things open more for me too.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah.
So that is like, it's a company, like access consciousness is like a circle R. It is just a lot of tools for like clearing and like looking for what, like they call them like awareness tools, right? Just like using your consciousness just to be more what you want to be. So there's a lot of like clearing tools, but then also just like it's like being in the question. So instead of like using this reality to make judgments, you just like ask questions and use your intuition. And then like things become so much clearer. Like all the confusion I think in my life just really sort of cleared up. Like, because I am intuitive and I'm empathic, but then that made me like almost like I was like being buffeted around by it was like I'd go into Walmart and I'd come out like feeling everybody's pain. It was just like too much. I'd be cranky, like just crazy. And so like with those tools, I could just be like, oh, is any of this mine? Oh no, that was just the people at Walmart, and I don't have to take that on. And like, just like all those tools just got me super clear about what is me, what's my gut telling me, that stuff.
Yeah.
Quite often our anxiety and our angst comes from other sources, doesn't it? It's not.
Yeah, and the projections, totally, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I remember, I always say that like the worst parenting I ever did were like those moments when I was like feeling like I was in public feeling judged by other people.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's where you're like, get out of this, like it's where you're just like lose your cool,
or dinners with my mother is another one. My daughter's there as well, and it's like you feel her watching my daughter's manners, and I'm like,
Right.
And we do a lot of things, and we have a lot of confusion around what other people think. I think as well. Not even if it's just we kind of know that this other person thinks a certain way, and maybe feel that judging, and maybe it becomes part of our own.
Why is that? Why do we do that? Why do we walk into a room and think that everyone is judging us?
I think sometimes they are. Like we as a society are very judgmental. I mean, if you just look at like that whole mask debate, it became right and wrong. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to make the right choice for me in this moment. It was like, there is one right way, and then one group said this. And it was like, and then people were like ranting, just like, like there was just so much judgment around like something that maybe didn't need to be that judged,
Yeah.
And then, then like I had a friend who got COVID, and she was like so ashamed. And like she'd been doing everything right, but it was like she felt so judged by everybody. It was like her fault, and like, no, you don't need to be that way,
No. Having lived through the 80s, we never want to get it to the point where it was the same as AIDS. You just no, it's dangerous. But I also think, going back to the parenting thing, nobody judges. I think women are particularly judgmental of other women. Just saying.
Oh my God, I was judgy as a new mom. I was like, oh, you got to use cloth diapers, and like And now I feel so bad. Like I'm like, oh, I will never do that to other moms.
Or even other women that haven't had children. They're like, well, if I had kids, they wouldn't be doing that.
Oh yeah.
Right. Oh yeah.
But that also translates to authorship as well, and I think that
I mean, everyone's got the right. Yeah, everyone's got the right way to do it, right? And then, but you have to check in for you. You have to trust your own gut and be like, is this relevant to me? And it may be like the perfect advice you need, but it may not fit you or your books or your career at all.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I'm really like, that's why finding the abundant, like when I found it, that I have a Facebook group for abundance mindset. And I was like, this is the only thing I would ever be willing to teach, because I don't have any answers for anyone else besides this. It's you finding your own answers. Right.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, doesn't it? You do have to take the onus is on you. You've got to take responsibility. You can get all the tools you like, but it's you, isn't it?
Right. And like things change, like what worked, in 2012, obviously didn't work now. Even what worked 3 months ago doesn't work now. And so like, I could tell you how I got here, but like you following that path might not work at all. Like, it's got to be your own journey and so like you feeling like what feels right for you, you know?
Yeah. And that kind of clears it. Like there's a lot of second guessing. I know I do it. Like I'm kind of doubting and second guessing and thinking, oh mate, what? But actually, if you can get rid of all the noise, all the extraneous stuff, and just listen to what yourself, then you can kind of actually make a few more decisions, make a few more things happen for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Access Consciousness, one of the like simple tools they give people therapy. You're just like, if it does it feel, sorry, did I freeze?
Yeah. Say that again.
Does a choice feel light or heavy? So you just kind of feel into the choice.
Right.
And then like, usually you can tell like, oh, one feels like more expansive, like exciting, expansive. And the other one's a little bit like, even though this is the one maybe people are telling you to do, like it feels lighter not to, or, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of an easy way to like check in with your gut.
That completely freaks me out, just even hearing that. I get a bit itchy. Like the idea that it's whether it's light or heavy decision. I'm like, but what if it was the wrong one?
So there's a book, there's this woman in Virginia who grows like 36-pound cabbages by talking to nature. Like she's way out there. But she says like, always act on like whatever your intuitive hit is, just like, and of course, because we always second guess, like, am I right or am I wrong? So like act on it as if it was right. And then you'll start to figure out, oh no, that wasn't right. You know, like, but the more you like act on what you think is your intuition, the clearer you're going to get on what was and what wasn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we act out of fear. We act out of, right? Like, or judgment or.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our decisions are made out of fear of the next book not being as successful, fear of the first book not being at all successful, fear of not doing the right thing. We have a lot of emails from listeners saying, you know, you had these 2 podcasts and they gave kind of opposing information, and I kind of go back and say that's because it was right for them, you know. I think when we're starting something new and quite and it can be intimidating, the overwhelm of self-publishing, you want the one right thing, and it's quite hard to go back to somebody and say, actually, there's no one right thing.
No.
Right. Yeah. But I believe that so strongly. Like I definitely am like, I don't have any answers. Like you have the answers. Like you have them all.
There's no golden ticket. It's your path and you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And so a lot of that's like clearing out your own, like changing your self-image and clearing out your own limiting beliefs so that when the answer shows up, you reach it. Like sometimes, like maybe if you told me 2 years ago you could hit USA Today list on a new release, I would have been like, I don't know, that might be too spendy to like go for it with an ad budget, and like, because my self-image wasn't there yet, right? So now I'm like, okay, so my new self-image is every new release hits the USA Today list, but I'm not going to be sad if that doesn't happen. But like that's what I'm like trying to embody. Yeah. Like, it just happens every time now, because that's my new that's my new level. That's what I'm telling myself anyway.
Yeah.
I love that.
And like I say, I won't be sad if it doesn't, you know, but that's just what I'm trying to call in.
So how do you clear out your limiting beliefs like that? Like how do you just repeat it?
Well, a lot of it is just really pinpointing it. Like if you're asking that question, like you said, when you're blocked with a book, like what is the story in my head right now? And if it's like, oh, people aren't going to like this because there's too much sex, then I'm like, okay, that's a belief I just need to clear. That's a lie. Like someone who likes sex is gonna like this book, right? If I like it, if it's a story in my head and I thought it was hot, then someone else thinks it's hot. Not everybody, but definitely someone else out there.
Yeah.
So like, if you love, and you're gonna love your books, right? You're not writing them unless you love them. So if you love your book, someone else will too, and that's all that matters. Like that's my number one advice: is just love your book.
Yeah. And that's.
Do you think part of the journey is learning to take criticism as well?
Yes. And like, so some of it is like, so this is what I think is when you're being aware, you'll know when it's the right information and when it's not, you know, like you'll be like, oh yeah, that feels right. Like I definitely rushed the ending. Or you'll be like, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And because you're like, you're confident in yourself, you know, like you're, and and like I say, like you can't please everybody. So it's knowing like, what did you think? Like sometimes you don't know, like you're in the book and you're, you know, you need a beta reader to point out, like you have a sense that something's wrong, but you're not sure what, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you get this beta reader who's like, well, it was confusing because you did this. And you're like, oh, of course. Yes, absolutely. But then someone else is like, I just didn't like your character. And you're like, well, I did. So that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Make yourself, eh?
I mean, you could also try to make her more likable if she's not likable, but like I had one a couple books ago who was like, she was just a little brattier, and some people didn't like her, but I was like, I think she's adorable. You know, I think it's fine. So, you know, I think she was who she was. That's how she showed up in my head. Yeah. And then I think you just have to make sure that they're, you know, does she also give, I don't know, this is just my random, but like, do you show that she brings something to the relationship? Or because a lot of times we're like, the guy is perfect and then the girl's imperfect and they're like, why is he even with her? So like, are you showing that she's bringing something? Does she help him with something too? Make sure. And if I have answered that question and they don't find her likable, then I'm like, well, I think it's okay, you know?
Yeah. And you don't want all your characters exactly the same, do you? Like, I mean,
that's how I feel. I'm like, I don't write only strong, you know, sometimes they are like submissive and sometimes they're feisty and sometimes they're not. And like, it is, for me, it's just how they show up. Like it's, I can't say I always write this way. Yeah.
And I think too, your characters can be reflected in your moods and how you're feeling when you're writing that book. Like you had this idea of this character, but as they progress, they change or whatever. And I really think it does make a difference.
It is hard when they change. I agree. Like when the energies change from when you were writing one section to the next, and then you're like, how do I reconcile these? That I struggle with that too.
Yeah. So one thing I was curious about, because you talk about your intuition and using your intuition quite a lot, and how do you know intuition versus the next shiny object? How do you define that? How do you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you get excited about something, it's going to be good. But if you have that sense of I'm talking myself into something, that's different. Right? So like, so I have a book out with an agent right now. And I think I've been ambivalent about, first of all, I'm successful as an indie author. So I've been ambivalent about like whether I even want it to get picked up. And so nothing's happened. And I think it's because my own like my energy isn't clear. Like I'm not like, yes, I want this. I want to get to sell that book. I want to be, I've been like, I don't know. And my train of thought about, but I also like when I said it to him, I had that talking myself into it energy. Like, oh, this could really be good for me because I want to get, you know, not like, it wasn't like, oh my God, this is it. It wasn't that excitement. No. It was more like I was talking myself into it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Flag the traditional.
I mean, I'm like, that's why I'm like, if he gives it back to me, I know exactly how to sell it myself.
Yeah.
So
so it's a win-win. There is no wrong way.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the ways that authors kind of can close themselves off is around money, around how they see it and how they use it and how those kinds of things. So can you talk a little bit about that and how it can open up our...
So like really examining money wounds can be huge. Like you might have a block to investing in your business. Like a lot of authors, I don't think this happens anymore, but it used to be, I feel like when I first started, people did think, oh, you just put it up on Amazon and you're done, you know, and then like, they were just so reluctant to like spend any money publicizing or, so like just looking like if you're, and I was raised, like my mom was super miserly. So like, if you have like those, like, then I think then it's the question, like, would a millionaire author be penny pinching this release, or would they, and which doesn't mean spend out of your means, but like looking at your, what are your like money beliefs? Where do you operate from? Are you operating from, I never have enough? Are you operating from, I have to save every penny? Are you operating from like too much spend? Like I'm going to like gamble on, like, cause I also went through that where like when I was in KU, it's kind of a gamble, like to spend big. You spend big to get into the top 100. And sometimes it pays off big, but sometimes it didn't. Like I had a book where I made like $8,000 on it, whereas like the ones before were making 20, 30,000. But I had spent just as much, and it was just like I spent way more than 8,000. Like I spent like 20,000 to make 8,000, like something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So are you, do you have the tendency to like overspend, or do you have the tendency to underspend? And what are your, like, do you think there's never enough? Do you think, do you have like some people have, in the book, the Jen Sincero book, You're a Badass at Making Money, she talks about, she had the thing of like, oh, if I make more than my dad, like she had a limit relationship. So do you have anything like, if I make more than my husband, like a reluctance to, or some people have it like, I don't want to make too much because I have to pay more in taxes. I'll hit the next tax bracket, or I'll lose my Social Security, like a disability benefit, or, whatever, like, are you putting limitations because you're, out of fear? Are those out of fear? Or sometimes they're just so unconscious. Like, so you want to just get conscious with your money beliefs, because they are shaping every step you take with your business.
Yeah. And that Jen Sincero book is really good. I read it, and you go through, and she has exercises in the book, and you can kind of look at your beliefs, like the one about not earning more than her father because of a loyalty pact with her dad. Like, that kind of thing is fascinating, and you don't realize it until you start looking into it in your own life. Like I had a lot of stuff to do with my father that I was kind of picking up on through doing all of those, and it's kind of subconsciously holding you back, and you don't even realize it, and you just
Yeah, my mom was super conservative with money. Like, she died like pinching pennies, and then I couldn't believe how much she had saved. Like I was like, it was sad to me. Like, she never enjoyed her money at all, And so I, like, sometimes I'll catch myself, and then I'm like, oh, what, you won't spend this much for an exclusive photo? I still haven't. I still haven't spent on it. Like, that's still a barrier. Like, I'm still like, it's not worth it. But I know people say it's worth it. But like, where are the things where you're like, oh no, I could never, that's too much. I'm not going to do that. Like, and are they related to like not thinking you're worth it? Yeah. Like, do you think she can spend on her books because they're better, but yours aren't worth it? Like, do you have some like worth issue around spending? Like, do you, if you want the organic blueberries, but they're more expensive, do you let yourself have them, or do you buy the regular blueberries? Or do you buy no blueberries because they're not in season? Yeah. And that's wasteful because your mom told you we only buy those in season. Yeah. And it's like a little thing, but like, are you like, now I always buy the organic blueberries because I love them, and they're like $5.99 right now. It's like ridiculous. But I'm like, I'm worth it. Like, I like these so much.
Come over here and buy organic blueberries. $5.99 is cheap, believe me.
Yeah, but sometimes they're way cheaper, but like just, it's like such a simple act. I think that was also in Jen Sincero's book, where she talks about these like, or no, actually it might have been the Get Rich Lucky Bitch. I think it's that one. The incremental upgrades where you just like, oh, do you need a new razor in your shower? Like, what if you bought a nicer soap? Like, just making these like small upgrades in your life starts telling yourself and your energy that like you're worth more. Yeah. There's this.
It doesn't have to be buying a Lamborghini. It can just be. Yeah.
Like, did you let yourself get the 700 thread count sheets? Yeah. Or, or the, whatever it is that you've been like, that you told yourself you didn't have enough for, or that you weren't worth it. It wasn't worth spending on yourself,
And some of these stories can be insidious because they seem perfectly reasonable, right?
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. And so you want to just like start policing them, almost like, oh, there's another place I'm telling myself I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it,
Like questioning them, right? Like
questioning like just
everything.
Being in the question. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, that book is Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and it's by an Aussie author, Denise Duffield Thomas, who I've also I've got that one too.
I literally bought it yesterday because I saw it in the Abundance Mindset group.
I love her. I also love her second book is called Chillpreneur, and I liked that one even better because because I am a workaholic. Yeah. And I, like that's me, like pounding out the books. And I had that belief that like, yes, you have to work 12 hours a day to make $1 million. And so after reading that, I was like, oh, wait, okay. Could I work 4 hours a day to make $1 million. Could I, you know, I believe you have to release a book a month, but like, look, there's lots of authors out there who release 4 books a year and make $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's just, again, it's like busting out my beliefs. And that Chillpreneur helped. And then I also, this isn't like really abundance mindset, but it is like lifestyle design, is the 4-Hour Work Week book.
Mm-hmm.
Because he really like pounds on the, like, you know, what are you working hard for? Like, are you going to work hard and save your money to retirement, or should you start living right now?
Yeah.
And so like, I'm almost done with the book, but like right away I was like, oh, like here I am, we're in COVID. I've got my kids at home and I'm feeling hassled every time, not every time, but like when my kid wants help with his homework, instead of being like, I'm so lucky. I get to spend this time at home with my kids, like seeing what his homework is doing, like what he's doing in class. These books will always be here.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't have to pound out a book. Like I can't to, and it's fun what he's doing in school.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just shift out of my alcoholism a bit.
Yeah. So you were cutting out a little bit there, but you're basically saying that spending time with the kids, you don't need to be spending all hours, right? That's
right. And that's maybe that's more important. You know, like I was prioritizing all this, the writing over everything, because that makes the money, but like, is the money the end all, you know?
Yeah. We all can hear you. We're all going, yeah, everything you're saying.
Yeah.
So, and the other, because it's, I mean, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but the idea of the more you focus on a problem, the more you bring the problem into your life. Like the more all you see is the problems, the more all you get is the problems, versus someone who can look for the positive things or look for the good things. But can you expand on that a little bit? Is there more that you could say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really useful if you start noticing like what you talk about with your friends. I have friends who I love, but like when we get on the phone, like all we talk about are problems. And then the other person tries to help talk you through it or support you, or, you know, and it's really nice that I have friends like that, except it's not that nice because like we're never celebrating. We're never in gratitude. We're never, so like, we're just creating like, oh, life is problems and we have friends to get us through them. So like, I'm grateful I have friends to get me through them, and they have been through thick and thin, but like, I feel so much lighter with friends who are almost who won't listen to my problems. You know, like I remember I called my writing partner, Lisa Vino. I'd written a book and I was worried. I think I was worried. I don't know if I was worried it was too short. I think I was worried it was too short. And I published it, and sure enough, like second review, and I know I don't read my reviews so manically anymore, but you know, second review is like, this book's too short. And I call her up and I'm like, oh my God, it's too short. She goes, no, you manifested that because you were worried it's too short. Just let it go. They're going to love your book. Don't think that again. And it was so great. Like, instead of being like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, like it was like, she just like dismissed my problem. Like, just, that is not a problem. You are being crazy. Stop. And sure enough, I stopped, and all the rest of the reviews were glowing.
Yeah.
You know, but I did manifest that because I was so worried that this book was too short and they would hate it. And, you know, so like, that's where our judgment like does create, it can create the haters. Like if you're judging yourself, then you're going to attract that. Like, whereas if you put your book out into the world thinking this is the best freaking book out there, I love this book to pieces, they're going to love it because they pick up that energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are we all putting out there? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because and along those lines was the other thing that I was the push energy versus the pull energy. So could you explain that, what that means? And
so a lot of times like we're out there on social media or newsletters, whatever, and we're like pushing our books. And when people feel that energy, a lot of times it makes them step back. Like, what are you selling? You know, right? It's that they get that salesy energy, or they get that push, and it makes them either put their barriers up or step away from you. And so better is like, if you can think of pulling, like it's more of an invitation energy. So you think of like pulling them, like, so that's you loving your book, right? When you're pushing, you're like, must buy my book. I have to sell my book. When you're like, I love this book so much, and I know you're going to love it too. Can you feel how that's different? It's like, there's an invitation there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to read my book, but I'm like, I know you're going to love this. Let me read you this passage. Let me share. Like, I remember opening an author's email, and she was just like raving about her character, like just how much she loved him. And I just one clicked because I was like, she sold me because she loved it so much, you know? And so like, don't be afraid to rave about what you loved or to like share those snippets. Even to go, I'm trying to work on like being brave enough to just go live and start reading on social media or TikTok or, you know, like, because if you love it, they're going to love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really hard because we're kind of taught to like not push ourselves for, you know, not that we're talking about pulling, but like not to, I don't know, present ourselves in a certain way, especially New Zealanders. Maybe this is not this is a cultural thing, but so, and there's actually, and it's awesome, like the idea of just like, I love my book, of course you will too. Like that's such an amazing energy, and I think that's hard, but it's something we definitely all need to work on. We definitely
compliments.
Yeah, and then you can feel it. Then they're curious. It's like those long form ads, you know, where you just have this long passage from your book and people click on it because it's an invitation. Like they just get curious. You're not like new release, blah 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 blah. You're just like, it's just some text from the book, and they're like, ooh, what's this? You know? Yeah.
Those
and they get right into it.
Those ads always work better for me than the ones where I'm trying to be all hooky and
right.
Yeah. Okay. And there is a thing in marketing, like, and it's not quite, but it's called push marketing versus pull marketing. And they say you kind of need a bit of both, but the pull marketing is definitely that idea of like you're being intriguing and drawing people in, and they don't feel quite so pressured. There is a definite, like, you know, I'm the same. Like if you're in a store and a sales assistant comes up to you, like, can I help you? No, get away, rather than just
totally. I'm always like, no, thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Just looking.
I mean, it's their job, you know, but we're like, no, leave me alone.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
But if they come over and they're like, oh, I love that shirt, you know, like that is, you know, this just came in and blah, blah, blah. They just start like standing next to you talking about it. Then you're like, oh yeah, what do you think? Da, 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 you know?
Yeah. Even though you know it's the same thing, right? Like you know that they're there for that purpose, but it's just something about it being a bit more engaging or something. Yeah.
Yes.
So if we can think of ourselves as that, and when we're doing promotions as authors, we're the cool store person who came over to chat, rather than the creepy one who's come, well, not creepy, but the
doing their job,
more aggressive one.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, in all of this, like, take it all with a grain of salt, because I'm sure I push my books all the time, but it's like just trying to have that pull energy instead, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got this Facebook group, which I am in.
Yes.
And other people can go into, obviously. So do you want to talk about that and why you set it up and what it's about?
Yeah. So after Sky invited me to do I was so happy. I think the year before or 2 years before, I had done like a sci-fi table, and I was kind of like, what do I know? You know, like I do have a sci-fi series, but I felt like unqualified. And then when she asked me to do this, it was like the one thing, like I say, because I always say I have no answers, but this is the one thing I was like, oh, it's my favorite topic on earth. Like, so happy to talk about abundance. And so then after that, I was like, oh, we should set up a group just where we can like cheerlead each other and help, because that helps you stay, when you have other people who are willing to be in abundance mindset, it just helps you stay there.
Yeah.
So I just wanted, like, just even for myself, to have people I can, you know, talk over it with, and then just to help cheerlead other people too.
Yeah.
So what's the group called, Renee?
It's called Abundance Mindset for Authors.
Okay.
And we're going to join that immediately.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. And immediately start posting. So
yay.
Wendy has this thing. Can we talk about your thing, Wendy?
Oh, if we must.
We've got to talk you through it, because so Wendy has a certain stage of her book. Like, she loves writing. She's a machine. She does it, gets in the flow, all the fun. And then she gets to a certain stage of her book, like kind of like when it's finished, like now.
Oh, finished.
And she hates it, and she thinks it's the worst thing she's ever written, and that it's a pile of poo, and she hands it, like she was just saying, she handed one over to her daughter, and she said, I think this is the worst book I've ever written, kind of thing, to read it, like to her beta readers. And every book she's written, like 40 plus books, and every single book she goes through the same stage. Is that, how do we work her through that? Can you explain that to us?
Well, sometimes I think by the time you finish a book, you're sick of it a bit.
Yeah.
Right? Like I am, like, and because I feel like I often, I don't know if I hate my book by the time I'm done, but I have those too. Usually it's like when first edits come back, I'm like,
You
like, and then like, I just can't read it one more time, like that feeling like
that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
So I guess it might be just that you need a break, because sometimes you have which I don't build breaks in, and you probably don't either. But like if you had, like sometimes you've had that where you go back to an old book and you're like, oh my God, it was so good. Why did I not think it was so good?
Yeah.
Because you just don't have enough distance. But it could just be clearing off like expectation, judgment, like fears.
All of the above.
I think sometimes you're just sick of it. I think you were just immersed in it. You're energetically done with it.
Yeah.
But it's still in front of you.
Yeah. I just don't think you have a clarity. You can see it clearly at the end of
No
it.
distance.
Like my daughter says to me, the day you come to me and said, this is a rocking good book, I'm going to be really worried,
And you get back to loving them, don't you, Wendy? Like, it stays like that. Yeah,
I love my books, down the track.
Maybe instead of fighting that, then you just accept
that's part of the process.
Or maybe you just say
post on the roadway, to success.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm in the like sick of it stage, or
that's all right. It's just a phase. It'll pass.
Yeah.
It always does. Yeah. It's just
and
funny.
know that it's a lie, that it's not good, right? Like you just have to know that. Like just be like, oh, that's a lie.
I know. And the last book that I just sent her, and she just came back to me and said, I love this book. And I'm just like, oh yeah, good on you.
I remember one of my first so you guys had asked about historical. I started a long time ago. I was writing historical, and I was doing Regency, and I called it the Regency snore. Like I just thought it was so boring. And it was like one of my, maybe continues to be like an all-time bestseller. Like it was just, so like we just have no perspective,
None. You're too close to it.
Yeah.
That's so funny. The Regency. And that's funny. You just don't, and that's why people never know, right? Like, so everyone says, oh, how do you build a bestseller? And it's like, it's almost like we have no perspective. We don't know whether it's going to be a bestseller. I don't even think like editors or people anywhere kind of know, really, to be fair.
Well, and honestly, that's why sometimes I wonder if it's just energy. Like, was it just, with E.L. James hitting it huge with 50 Shades was, maybe her stars were just aligned. Like she would just, she believed she loved that book so much because she wrote it little by little, like, and then other people loved it because it was so raw and inviting. But it wasn't because it was the best book ever written on BDSM or anything,
Yeah, it was just different. Yeah, and it was just hit the market at a time where people were looking for something.
It was magic. So we can all have magic too,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can all be magic.
Awesome.
That's cool. So are there any, like, I've gotten all this amazing information out of you. I'm feeling good now. I'm feeling like I can move forward in my positive attitude to the world. Is there anything else you want to add, or anything that you think of that we need to kind of think about when we're thinking about this kind of stuff?
I just think like definitely my number one advice is like, just love your book. Like if you're in that space of love, it's going to go out to the world. Which doesn't mean that you won't have the phase where you think it sucks, but like send it out with love. Don't be like don't be that like of like, I'm sending it out, but I hope you don't hate it. Like that because then it like the energy gets shuttered. Like people won't find it because you're like not sure if you want them to find it because you're half sure it might suck. And I've done that. Like that, I'm just saying this, speaking from total experience. Like don't send it out with that. Like you want to send it out with like, this is awesome. You're gonna love it. Like because I love it.
Yeah, and you will too. That's
awesome advice.
I feel the difference, right? Like I don't know if anyone listening can, you can the idea of sending something out with love like that just feels so amazing compared to kind of that half sure, half scared kind of energy that you'd be putting out there. Like
Yeah, I had a dance company for years and I was always half sure we sucked. And so I would never sell tickets to the show. Like I'd be like, I have a show, and then I'd be like, maybe they would hate it. Like, and so we'd always have this like half empty auditorium because I didn't go all in with inviting people,
Yeah.
And even on this USA Today run, it's like my co-author wanted to go all in. And I don't know, maybe I'm like sheltering myself from getting hurt. Like, I don't know if a full price book. So I was kind of like, okay, I'll let her do that, And then I was running a meditation with the Abundance Mindset group. I did a Zoom, and I had us all connect with our books and I with our new release books. And I said, like, ask your book if it has anything to tell you. And my book was like, don't sell me short.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I am totally selling it short. Like I was not all in on the USA Today run. I was letting her be all in, but I was afraid of getting hurt, And so then after that, I was like, got off and I booked a bunch of promotion, and I was like, just set my energy of like, no, we're going to hit this list. Like, we got to do it.
Yeah. And that at a basic level is exactly what you're talking about. Like, people might say, oh, it's a little bit woo for me. I don't believe in this loving my book stuff. But actually, it's the energy and the actions that you put into place when you have that kind of stuff around.
That's right. Because then you know, like, oh, I need to push a little more. Or sometimes it's like time to, like with me, like overspending on my KU books, like time to stop. Sometimes I would be overspending out of ego. It was like I wanted the book to hit top 100, even though my gut was saying this isn't the right one to push. But I would be like embarrassed if it didn't. So I was still spending when it was way too time to pull back. You know?
Yeah.
It's like not trusting the gut. That was like spending out of fear, not out of love, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
all this trusting your gut business. I don't know. I'm still back on the how do you know how to trust your gut question. But it's just you just get experience, right? You just
try. Yeah. Just try, and then you get clearer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's awesome. I'm thank you so much for coming on with us today, Renee. I've enjoyed it immensely. So if someone wants to find you or your books, where's the best place to go?
My website is reneeroseromance.com.
Okay.
But probably that face, I would love to see everybody in the Facebook group. Would be great.
Yeah. So Abundance Mindset for Authors. If you look that up, you should find it and join. And we will all be there with bells on.
Absolutely. I've just joined. I'm going to join right now.
So Wendy will be there, not talking.
Yeah.
She'll be there lurking. So thank you very much. And where can we be found, Shah?
So we can be found at spargirlspodcast.com, and I'll make sure that in the show notes, if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, scroll down on YouTube for the links to the books that Renee's mentioned in the podcast as well as her Facebook group. But they're well worth a read.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
I love the Gen Zero books. Yeah. Anyway, okay, awesome. So thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us again for another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We'll be back again next week, but for now, farewell.
Farewell.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.